Okay, so the graphic novel that I chose for this class is Moriarty, or Mr. Moriarty. Yeah, Moriarty. The creative team behind this is the writer is a Phil graduate. Fun fact. By the name of Daniel Corey. There are actually more than one artist. There's two. Forgive me if I mess up the names. Anthony DeCedu and Mike Vosberg. Anthony DeCedu was also a colorer for a couple of pages, and Mike Vosberg was artist for a few. They all had this is like a deluxe edition of more than one comic, well, graphic novel. I'm sorry. So it's a bunch of issues and just in one big book. But I'm only going to focus on one, and that would be the Dark Chamber. Forgive me. Uh, the colorist for this comic was Perry Freeze, and the letterer and design was Dave Lanphier. The length of this comic, I can't really give you the length because there are no numbers on the pages. That surprised the mess out of me. There are no numbers anywhere on these pages, so it doesn't really fit the whole graphic novel thing since it's a compilation of more than one issue. From page one, we already know, well, technically, since the pages aren't numbered, but from page one, we already know whose story this is. This is Sherlock Holmes' enemy, Mr. Moriarty. We figure out on page one that Sherlock Holmes is dead, and Mr. Moriarty is basically stumbling around looking for his perfect purpose in life. He takes on a fake name and becomes a detective himself, but more like a darker, more crude Sherlock Holmes. The story does have a very solid beginning, middle, and end. The beginning, we learn that Mr. Moriarty has donned another disguise as a professor and a detective, and he takes on a case and to look for Sherlock Holmes' brother, but later finds like this ancient Greek cult thing going on, and that Sherlock Holmes' brother has infiltrated this uh, cult, so to speak, and has gone missing. We also understand that the cult leader goes by the name of Tartarus. It For this to be like an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, it's like a really sci-fi supernatural thing going on. I've never seen somebody take on a take like this, so that really surprised me. But Mr. Moriarty probably is the only one in this first issue who has more character development than anybody else. But in Act One, we quickly see him get rid of his professor disguise, his detective disguise, and go back to the dark, charming Mr. Moriarty. In the middle, we learn more about this cult, and we get a lot more action, and it's really like it's just really actiony in the middle. That I can't. You learn a few things, but not like enough to be like, aha, oh my gosh. And the ending, of course, our anti-hero takes on the actual antagonist, and of course he wins, but there's like at the end you don't figure out what happened to Sherlock Holmes' brother. You just know that he leaves a note for Mr. Moriarty and he's still missing, and you don't figure out what happens until like the end of issue 3. It's I was disappointed. I thought I would know what had happened to him. The transitions are effective. They do they do keep me it has a believable time frame. That's all I can say. Like you don't get lost. You understand what's going on in each panel and everything else. It's believable. I can give you that much. The directional flow is something I really. Okay, so going back to whose story this is Mr. Moriarty's. In this first issue, his goal is to find Sherlock Holmes' brother, but also to he was framed by this Greek cult. There a lot of people died in the first issue. Since I got so distracted by the art that I couldn't pay attention to who these characters were. So forgive me. But a lot of people had died in the first issue, and he kind of this cult tries to make Mr. Moriarty take the fall for it. The conflict in Act Two kind of does support the goal because he is looking for Sherlock Holmes, but you also learn more about this cult. Now that I think about it, there's probably two goals: find Sherlock Holmes and also clear his name, so on and so to speak. But it does support the conflict, and that too does support the goal. but the conflict is pretty short. Like you learn a few things about what the cult is doing and why they're doing, well, not why they're doing this, just you know that they're using some type of ancient Greek power to have people look upon their darkest fears, and it's just a really big wow, hoo-ha. This is really different from the actual Sherlock Holmes things. Like I've it's a little science fictiony, and it's also a little supernatural. Is that even a word? I don't think that's a word. um, to be honest, I would recommend this to like a few of my classmates because I know one of them probably wouldn't like it. Uh, I think it would be a little bit too dark and depressing to say for one of our classmates, but I think a few the other two would like it. I would not recommend this to my friends though. I could not see them reading this. I can already see all of us laughing about how none of this would actually make sense and all these other things. Uh, Something that I noticed in this comic is that in Act 1 really goes by quickly. Like he gets the case, he gets framed, and then he gets rid of his professor identity and goes straight back to being Mr. Moriarty. And I understand that each page is a story on its own. Each page actually is a story on its own. You learn something about him new every day. He's narrating his own story, and that's under, understandable. But it's just like everything just moved a little too fast for me, and I didn't have enough time to catch up. And that's what kind of threw me off a little bit. But it was a fun read. I enjoyed it. The art style kind of hurt my eyes, but I guess I guess people loved it. Well, not I guess people loved it, but Mr. Corey did a wonderful job. It's a good story. It's just the art style is not my cup of tea. That's usually where most of these things fall at. But I enjoyed it.